we live? Your thumbs up does nothing for me. Yes. Okay, good. Fuck, I forgot that. I forgot how to welcome us into the show. I'm about to laugh. Welcome to the Hardy Complex. This is episode number I don't give a fuck. We are... What is today? It's Friday. We're live on Friday across all platforms. YouTube, UZ Media, so on and so forth. Obviously, there's the whole kind of discussion about myself and my future with UZ Media, so at any point in time, this could be the final, any Hardy Complex could be the final Hardy Complex if I don't get the rights to the name. But one way or another, Jesus Christ, quite simply, at the end of the day, we're on live Friday right now. We usually tend to go live on a Saturday and so on and so forth, but there's a big difference in how we're doing something. One way or another, we've got a fair show. We're going to be going down a few different things. First, we're going to start out with Capital Carnage. We're going to go into the Wednesday Night Intensity and Friday Night Severity reviews, which I probably should start keying up right now, considering there's been a history of bullshit with this kind of crap. But yeah, we're going to run down Capital Carnage. We're going to run down Wednesday Night Intensity. We're going to run down Friday Night Severity. A few different topics of conversation that may come to mind. Maybe a little bit of a list video if I can think of one. I don't know. We're really going off the cuff. We were supposed to go on tomorrow, but couldn't. So it is 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on today, Friday, August the 16th, 2019. We're going to be live for maybe an hour. We're trying to low down. We're trying to lower the time of our podcasts, so it's going to be about an hour, 5 minutes, hour 10 minutes perhaps. One way or another, different from what we usually started out doing. It's 2 hours, then we did an hour and a half, and we did an hour and 20. Now we're doing an hour and 10. Hopefully getting it down to an hour. But one way or another, this is just a podcast. I use that term a lot. I use a lot of terms very often. There's my chair. I use a lot of terms very often, and that's one of them. But we're going to run down Capital Carnage, Intensity, Severity. We're probably going to run down something about, WWE and SummerSlam, though I did not watch the show. And we're just going to go off of whatever the hell we tend to... whatever the hell we end up feeling like running down. Very off-the-cuff show. Very last-minute show. I was only informed yesterday that we were going to have to do this a day early, and so the obvious plan was to then do it live across all platforms. And with that being said, we can't do our usual things, so there's no ad read today, there's no jingle, there's no UZ Media specific sort of post-show. So what you're getting now is essentially just the podcast in all of its wretched glory, without any excess sort of benefits or anything like that. So for the UZ Media, or for what is, I guess, UZ Direct, that's what they're calling it. For all the UZ Direct subscribers, no added bonus this week. My apologies for that. But nonetheless, it's still going to be your fairly typical Hardy Complex episode. So we're just going to get into Capital Carnage now. We're going to talk a little bit about the show as a whole. We're going to stop running it down in the way that we usually tend to run things down. We're going to kind of halt with the prototypical bullshit of just kind of rambling on about whatever it may be, going in order from the kickoff match to the main event. We're just going to skip around the show a little bit, talk about the goods, the bads, the notables, and so on and so forth. Also, for those that are watching without seeing Severity this week, we are going to be running it down. It has been taped, of course, so we all got to see it live, or not live, but we got to see the version of it that will be released. So we already know what's going on in the show, so while Intensity and Capital Carnage are shows that have already happened, and will be spoiled for the people that didn't watch them, this will be spoiling all of severity for everyone, because it has not aired live yet. It will air, as I said, this is being filmed on Friday. It'll be airing later tonight in roughly, 8.5 hours? So, spoiler alert there. If you have no problem with that, continue to watch. So let's just kind of get into the thick of it. Let's obviously start out with the notable thing that happened that I think needs to be talked about, and that is the USW Women's Championship match. It was Alicia Sinclair defending the title against Haley Osser. We'll get into the good and the bad after this, but the most notable thing, even more so than the results of the Red Belt title match and the USW Tag Team title match, is Alicia Sinclair and her injury. If you did not see Capital Carnage, I'll try to explain it in the least gruesome sounding way humanly imaginable. But one way or another, Christ alive, there's the phrase again. Alicia Sinclair and Haley Osser were going into a back and forth, delivering strikes to each other. Sinclair ducked a clothesline, went off the ropes, got hit with a knee from Haley Osser. She stumbled back into the ropes, hit Osser with an elbow, which sent her into the ropes. And as she was bouncing back off, she ducked a clothesline attempt from Sinclair and went for a baseball slide. But Sinclair either stumbled or Haley Osser was a little off-center, and she ended up doing the baseball slide with... Alright, it's hard to... She did not do the baseball slide in the typical way, which did not help matters at all, but the best way I can describe it, because it doesn't have a name, the best way I can describe it is if you imagine yourself lying on your side in your bed, with your feet straight out, and the leg you have on top being bent at the knee out front. So you've got your knees straight out, your top knee is bent at an angle. That's how she was sliding, which is fairly reasonable. I mean, it's understandable, because the baseball slide has injured people in the past. We've done it in just a false swoop. And at any point in time, you could get up from that baseball slide and fuck up your ankle, because you don't have any sort of... your leg isn't at any angle, so it's not supporting anything, or so it's not supporting your opposite knee, so you could just kind of stand up, and because you don't have any balance on the knee you're not using to stand up, you could either fuck up the opposite knee or the knee you're using to get up with, because you have there is no advantage in I don't want to say center of gravity. There's nothing to plant a foot on in order to get up, so you're just kind of hoping that you can regain your balance, and sometimes people don't. It's hard to it's kind of hard to explain, but one way or another, she goes for a baseball slide, clips Alicia Sinclair's leg, but Alicia Sinclair ends up falling forward, and because Haley Osser, from the replay that they ended up having to show, and from what we saw, I saw a different angle from what was aired on pay-per-view, but from the angle that we were shown, by the time Sinclair was falling forward, Haley Osser already had Sinclair's, I want to say right foot. It would be the right foot, caught underneath her knee, so Sinclair couldn't fall forward without her leg going backwards. And what ended up happening was Sinclair just went forward, just all the way forward down to the mat, and Osser's leg pinned Sinclair's foot beneath her body. So the baseball slide ended up having her leg go backwards for a gruesome-looking few moments, and then Sinclair went forward until Sinclair just kind of collapsed onto her side. But luckily, she was wearing her wrestling boots. But one way or another, there's the phrase again. You could see a little bit of I don't know if it was the tibia or fibula, but it was one of the bones sticking out of the top of her calf muscle, which is not a pretty sight. It was very obvious that she had broken something. You didn't know what extent it was. But referee immediately threw out the match as soon as you could hear Sinclair screaming in pain. And And Oster didn't know what to do. She was kind of stunned because she was trying to figure out what happened. She could see Sinclair was holding her leg. She didn't know it was that bad, though. Referee throws the match out. It goes to a no contest. Sinclair is stretchered to the back with an air cast on her leg. A few days later, we get the or everyone gets the news that it was a broken tibia and a broken fibula. So a massive broken leg for Alicia Sinclair. She'll be out for a long time. And as the reigning USW Women's Champion, that's a really bad thing. So Sinclair's out for a number of probably months, most likely months, with a broken leg. And while she recovers, her USW Women's Championship is, well, we'll get to that when we get to the intensity review. But one way or another, there's a fucking phrase again. That's the most notable thing that happened on Capital Carnage, the injury, and it's going to have drastic consequences going forward when it comes down to things like the story being told, where her Equinox is looking great, and so is Haley Oster, and Alicia Sinclair was looking valiant as all hell. These three women were doing fantastic. They were pulling the weight from the top of the card and holding down, or batting down the hatches, as some like to say. But for one of them to go out with this kind of injury, but an injury nonetheless, is just, it sucks. You don't want to wish that upon anyone, but nevertheless, that's the situation we're dealing with, and you can only really wish for the best and speediest recovery for Alicia Sinclair, who has done a marvelous job at holding down the reins as the top woman in intensity. So you can absolutely predict, something like a massive pop for Sinclair when she comes back, whenever that may be. But for now, it's Oster and Equinox fighting for the title, with your Peyton Hawthorns and your Taylor Hells, and that's what you got right now. So going forward, it's difficult to see where this story goes now, because you knew that her Equinox was involved for the sake of building up her character, and she looked like more of a challenger than I think anybody predicted she would look like at this point. But many people are calling for her to win the title, and have been for a while. Don't be surprised if that ends up happening. It'll be much deserved, but at the same time, it's just a really shitty situation, especially considering this was probably one of the most enjoyable stories to follow. It was extremely fun to see where this storyline was going, and I really wanted to see how it would end, because at the end of the day, Sinclair, Oster, Equinox, they're all really on the same level in the playing field. So what happens now going forward will probably tell a much deeper story, because there's going to be a need in the creative department to make sure that this injury won't sideline or derail the story they were looking to tell, as well as making Alicia Sinclair's absence, which will be the case for a number of months, feel like it doesn't matter, because there are plenty of women that can come up and start working into the women's championship picture to the point where Alicia Sinclair can recover, and so on and so forth. Whatever she needs to do to get back to fighting shape. There are plenty of women that can start putting in motion a story where they can contend and they can fight for the title, and allow her the recovery time she needs to the point where the women's division does not suffer with her absence, and her absence allows her to heal, as well as allows the women's championship picture to thrive, now that there is an opening, and an opening for probably more than just one performer. So that's that, and the future of that story being told is unknown. I really liked the story that was being told, because I think it was absolutely amazing to see this sort of thing. Sorry, my bad. Okay, there we go. Just wanted to change the title to adequately fit. The story was really enjoyable to follow. I really wanted to see what was going to happen. All three women looked like they could have come out on top at any point in time, and that is the sort of unpredictability that you just don't get in wrestling a lot. And the fact that we were getting it right now was fantastic, with three great performers, was also fantastic, but at the same time, the fact that it got cut down like this really sucks. What the fuck? I'm sorry, is there... Hold on a minute. Sorry, people are dumbasses that don't realize that their music is not needed to be heard around the neighborhood. One way or another, oh, God alive, there we go again. Alright, we're going to cut that out. So, end of the topic of conversation with the USW Women's Championship picture. Now on to the good and the bad. Let's start with the really good. Capital Carnage was an enjoyable show. I thought for the bad intensities that we've been getting over the past number of weeks, this was a breath of fresh air in most regards. Made up for most of the bad intensities that we've been getting, and made for a reasonably enjoyable show, despite not having too much anticipation built up from the lack of care that the intensities have been pushing forward with this card. So let's talk about the good. First of all, the main event, as obvious as it was, because as much as people wanted Philip Akron to win and regain the title, there's got to be a reason they put it on Suzuki Kirikashi. There needs to be, and considering Suzuki Kirikashi and the Promised Land are the talk of the town on intensity, they are really running shit on intensity. There's no way they're going to have the leader of the Promised Land look weak by winning his first world title and having it being taken away just less than a month later. Not going to happen. Not how this is going to work. But here we go. Kirikashi versus Philip Akron. Many people wanted Philip Akron to win, regain the title. It's a very question. We still don't know why they took the title off of Philip Akron so quickly in the first place. But that's done. Done and done. We're moving towards the future. I don't know what Akron's plan is, and I don't know what his direction is. But at Capital Carnage, the match he was in was very, very predictable, as much as people didn't want it to be predictable in that sort of way. Kirikashi wins, retains the USW title. I'm really excited to see where the Promised Land goes. The story of this cult-like group with Tanner Wallace and Blaine North starting out, and Suzuki Kirikashi being clearly cemented as the leader, then Blaine North bringing his brother in, made it feel really like a cult, and then the New Northern Lights started getting above, in the Promised Land's eyes, they started becoming infatuated with the idea that they could be popular and successful on their own, aside from the Promised Land. Like, they were bigger than the Promised Land. Meant that Kirikashi and Tanner Wallace needed to cut the fat from the group, so they cut Blaine North and Sammy North out of the group. Then it became just Suzuki Kirikashi and Tanner Wallace for a few months. Then George Martin turned on Alex Martin and joined the Promised Land. New fucking life. And the fact that George Martin turned on Alex Martin in such a way that it severed the ties meant that they wouldn't be they ensured that the member of their group joined in such a way that they wouldn't get a rehash of the New Northern Lights, which is fantastic because not many wrestling acts end up learning from their past mistakes. These guys, the Promised Land, learned from their past mistakes. They triumphed over their past mistakes, which was a fantastic evolution of their character. Now, George Martin and Tanner Wallace are teaming together, and Suzuki Kirikashi is doing what he always set out to do, become the world champion. So now Suzuki Kirikashi is at the top of the mountain, USW champion. The story's always been building to what does Suzuki Kirikashi do with the world championship, because the Promised Land was always built off of the message, and I'm a firm believer, because of what the Reese family has taught me, and the main eventers have taught me, that stables, in order to succeed, need to have a reason to be together. Alright, the Nexus could have succeeded, and it would not have, it was always because of the way they were booked. But the reason they were together was never the reason they were destined to fail, because it was always the reason they were destined to succeed. They're a group of guys, a group of rookies that came in, wanted to storm the place, and take over. That was the story. That was the reason they were together. So they had a reason for being together. It doesn't work when you have just a number of guys join up for no point in specific, just for the numbers game. That makes no sense. The Shield was always about injustice and rectifying that injustice. As heels, they made their own definition of injustice. As faces, they abided by the true definition of justice, but they always set out to right the wrongs. That's why the Shield worked so well. But when you have a temporary goal, it doesn't work. Look at the Core. The Core was founded by the guys that got outcasted from the Nexus. Their only goal was to be together because they left the Nexus. They were all associated, aside from Ezekiel Jackson, they were all associated with the Nexus in some way. Their end goal was only to just destroy the Nexus. But what happens when you destroy the Nexus? Where do you go from there? Nowhere. Alright, once you destroy the Nexus, there's no reason to turn on each other, so it's not like you can end the story that way. You just go their separate ways, and that's not how stables are meant to work. There's always got to be dissension in order to ensure that that stable feels like it's a group made by powerful people joining together. All those powerful people can separate at any point in time and become distinct individuals. The God complex is the only difference from this rule of thumb, where the God complex are made up of Octavian, Aphrodite, Ophion, and Artemis. They have no reason for being together. They have no end goal in mind. And if they were to split tomorrow, aside from Aphrodite, I don't think anybody would be their own person. They'd all just be lost in the shuffle as these ghoulish freaks, maybe redesign themselves, but then lose all the semblance that made them special. The only reason the God complex works so well is because there's no dissension amongst the ranks. Even if there's being dissension teased right now, there's no real true dissension. There's no idea that Ophion could turn on Artemis and Octavian and Aphrodite, or Aphrodite could turn on the rest of the God complex, or Octavian or Artemis could turn. There's no semblance of that. They're all four people banded together, and if they separated tomorrow, there's nothing that is about them that really stands out, aside from Octavian's story towards contending. The God complex work. For whatever reason, they work. And I don't think they need to split up at any point in time in order for the God complex to feel as though it reached its climax, its crescendo. The God complex is the only example of going against the grain and still working out. The Promised Land story has always been Suzuki Karakashi brought these people together, and as long as they respected him, he'd respect them. And he would bring them to the to the ultimate spot on the mountain, the top of the card, the top of the mountain, the Promised Land, hence the name. Blaine North brought in Samuel North, lost the meaning of the Promised Land, and got kicked out because he wasn't worthy of it. And Suzuki Karakashi had the international title, which wasn't the top of the mountain, but it was getting there. It proved he was capable of getting to the top of the mountain. Now he's at the top of the mountain. Now he's got his disciples, Tanner Wallace and George Martin. Not called disciples. Very, very, very little, even alluding to the group being a cult, despite the fact that their mission statement and everything is very cult-like. And it's pretty much just understood it's a cult. But now, Suzuki Karakashi has the power. He's at the top of the mountain. Now the goal is to get Tanner Wallace and George Martin at the top of the mountain. Do I think that's possible? Maybe. I don't see George Martin getting to the top. Truthfully, I don't think he's as good as his brother. And his brother's currently going through some legal battles right now. But I don't think he's as good as his brothers. Christ alive. I don't think he's as good as his brother. I don't think he's as charismatic as his brother. I don't think he's as great of a wrestler as his brother. And I don't think he can carry a company like his brother can. I think Tanner Wallace is really good, but Tanner Wallace has never been Tanner Wallace. Tanner Wallace has always been the guy in the Promised Land that helped the other guy in a tag team situation. Tanner Wallace is not Tanner Wallace. Tanner Wallace is one half of the group inside the Promised Land. So at the end of the day, unless there's something that changes, that'll never be the case. George Martin can't carry a company. Tanner Wallace can't be something unique enough, aside from the Promised Land, or without the Promised Land, in order to run the company. So at the end of the day, the goal for Karakashi is to get both men to the top, to the pinnacle. Can he do that? Let's see. The mission statement has been for the past 3 years now. The mission statement has been working up to this moment. This moment is now. Now it's time to see how that mission statement sets out. If it happens, that the Promised Land will end up being one of the greatest stories ever told in professional wrestling, especially modern professional wrestling. But if it doesn't, it'll be one of the ultimate great stories, but dignifying failure that ends up plaguing the Promised Land and plays into stories for years to come involving the guys. Suzuki Kirikashi has now firmly cemented himself as the face of USW. In storyline, face of USW. Beat the USW champion for the title. Beat the former USW champion to retain the title in the rematch. Now, what he does with the USW championship is his choice. He has no guys to face. He doesn't contractually have any sort of obligation towards anyone other than himself. And at the end of the day, he can either choose to take that USW title and continue to rise to the ranks and forget about the Promised Land, or he can try to help the Promised Land every step of the way. And the fact that it can go either way, because the story of Suzuki Kirikashi in himself has been leading up to both being extreme possibilities, is amazing. This is great. I love the choice. It needed to happen eventually. The fact that it's doing it now, before the Promised Land loses any sort of momentum, while they're at the top of the card, is fantastic. My opinion, the only reason they put the title on Kirikashi now is because they needed to pull the trigger while the goddamn barrel was smoking, in order to get another shot lined up when the timing was right. Alright, you pop one in a guy, he's got that bullet wound in his chest, he's clutching to his chest, as long as the smoke is rising from that damn barrel, pop a second shot, and it's done. It's game over. You killed that person. You killed whoever got the first bullet, you put a second bullet in the chest, and you made sure the job was done. They needed to pull the trigger while the barrel was hot. And now that they pulled the trigger, you've got the most over and most most enjoyable to watch group in professional wrestling at the top of the mountain at all points in time. The Promised Land run Wednesday Night Intensity. And you can see just how great they are based off of the fact that they ran Wednesday Night Intensity, Friday Night Severity, for a long time. Even without being the World Heavyweight Champion. Fell off the map, went to Intensity, and ran over Intensity with a completely different face. Brilliance. They pulled the trigger, and it was worth it. That's the only reason I can see them taking the title off of Philip Akron, because they needed to do something quick before the Promised Land lost momentum, and they did it right here. So that was the best thing about the show. Second best thing, alright, the end of Metric as we know it. Zach Hardy has been running amok with Metric, hasn't been doing much. Metric has been a really just a failure of a project. The first failure that Zach Hardy's had in a number of years. But it's firmly cemented now just how big of a flop Metric was with the Red Belt Championship match. So, obviously, what was talked about last week, Otis Crane getting the shit beat out of him by Metric, walking in a very hurt, very damaged, very wounded animal, being thrown to the wolves like a piece of garbage. He had to overcome all of that to get the Red Belt title back. Zach Hardy controlled most of the match. Otis Crane ended up having some fight, ended up trying to claw back into the match, just couldn't get the job done. He was wounded, he was hurt, he needed help. He got help. Ash a few weeks ago had an interaction with Metric that, in any other way, would be forgettable. But it's not forgettable for this very reason. The fact that Ash leapt over the barricade, after his interaction with Anarchy just the other week, and the following ensued. Zach Hardy knocked out the ref, everyone in Metric got involved, Ash was laid out with the discus lariat, I think it was Anarchy, Prophecy, and Seth lined up for the shot, the swing, the closing moment, the closing curtain on Otis Crane, and Anarchy just leveled Zach Hardy with a steel chair and knocked him the hell out, turned his back on Metric, found whatever the fuck promise it was he was looking for, laid out Prophecy, laid out Seth, laid out the rest of Metric, helped Otis Crane set up for the stepladder on Zach Hardy. Even throughout all of the beatings, referee runs down, counts the 3 count, Otis Crane wins the Red Belt Championship. Perfect close off to the feud. Now Zach Hardy and the rest of Metric go into the feud with Anarchy and Ash, which I think has a boatload of momentum, made Metric feel something that they haven't felt in a number of months. Made the whole group feel this sort of special feeling that they haven't had in a whole load of time. All from just one interaction that in any other case didn't fucking matter. But here, it fucking mattered. And Otis Crane is the new Red Belt champion. He'll go on to do whatever the hell it may be. I'm hoping it's either a feud with Indigo Child or Quincy Newsome. But I'm not going to hold out too much hope. So that was the second best thing on the card. Third best thing on the card was the whole Blue Belt Championship match with Tyreek Carver and Mr. Anthony. Carver obviously wins, retains the Blue Belt title. Mr. Anthony can now go up into the USW Championship picture and face Suzuki Hirakashi whenever the hell he feels like it. I really would have rather had him beat Philip Akron at Bulletproof and become the new, or like the next USW champion. And I've said that before, but I mean, things became less predictable now, which was great, which was fantastic. But I failed to see how Mr. Anthony could hold a candle to Suzuki Hirakashi and fight Suzuki Hirakashi and contend for the title without Hirakashi looking weak. We'll see. But I think Mr. Anthony, leaving the Blue Belt title picture is for the best. He's been fighting for the title for almost a year now. It's time he goes up to the main event. Now we get into the mediocre. The Promised Land, George Martin and Tanner Wallace beat the Stargazers to become the new USW Tag Team Champions. Just gonna be honest, after the whole Sam Basin and Shane Grayson storyline, I would have liked for the Stargazers to have held the title for a little bit longer, especially after beating Ezra Kills and Benny Franklin. But it didn't end up happening. The Promised Land, while I don't think they needed the USW Tag Team titles, it does help the fact that the USW Tag Team titles are now in the hottest act in intensity. So it works, and it's fine with me. I just would have liked to see the Stargazers hold on to the title for a little bit longer. So it's mediocre for the reason that it had a great conclusion. Like, the result of the match was fine and it was good, but it cost someone something that, while they didn't need, it would have been nice to see. I wanted the Stargazers to have another nice long title reign. Now to the bad, and it's really just the entire undercard that was bad. So all the title matches really delivered, aside from Sinclair and Osser, who before the injury and before the broken leg, it was a great match. It was tapped to be a really, really solid match. But the mid-card was just meh. We'll go into probably the least meh on the card, and it's shocking to say that with an Andrew Morris match. But Andrew Morris beating Quincy Newsome. I'll tell you what, I really like the result. I think Quincy Newsome is a fantastic performer. I think he's a great star. He's bland as a babyface, only for the reason that he hasn't been given much. He came over from Severity, now is on Intensity. Hasn't been doing much because he hasn't been given much, but he is the babyface because he was over as fuck on Severity. So we lose to Andrew Morris. Andrew Morris looks great, and don't get me wrong, he's really improved as a singles performer. But at the end of the day, Andrew Morris doesn't have the star power yet to justify beating a guy like Quincy Newsome, who, even though he's bland, he's still pretty over. Not really over, not extremely over, but he's pretty over. And the crowd tends to still like him. This gives Andrew Morris a good rub, which is fantastic, because at the end of the day, he needs a push. He needs something to feel special. And beating Quincy Newsome, while it isn't like the changing, like a change the world sort of thing, where his entire career is going to go up now because of this win, it does give him a sense of credibility, which is great for his character. And I like the fact that it opens the opportunity for a feud, because Quincy Newsome versus Andrew Morris was actually a pretty fun match. The difference is it was questionable because while Andrew Morris is improving, he doesn't have anything. There's nothing that you can tell me about Andrew Morris's character that I go, yeah, he's fantastic at it. Like, he's a good mic worker. Don't get me wrong. When he was with MP45, he could bounce off things with Andrew Palmer, like a fantastic tag team, like they were sharing the same fucking mind. But as a singles performer, he's not carrying a promo very well. Like, he gets on the microphone and you go, alright, he was a fair promo. I mean, it didn't entice me to do anything, but it's not like I wanted to turn off the TV. It just did really nothing for me. It was kind of like it was like it was walking the line in between good and bad. It was fair. And he's not the best singles wrestler. He's improving. He's getting there. But he's not the best singles wrestler. There's nothing that stands out about Andrew Morris that I think he does better than half the roster. I think he's middle of the road. I like the chance to face Quincy Newsome, get familiar with Quincy Newsome and how Quincy Newsome works, to allow him to be able to he's never really been a tag team or a singles performer. He came from the wrestling school, brought in, did a little bit of lower card work, and as I've said before, had success as a tag team, split up. Now he's in an environment he's not used to, a singles performer in the mid card. Alright, but at the end of the day, there's the fucking phrase again. Sure, I'll say it again. At the end of the day, Andrew Morris is learning as a singles performer. It's great to have him learn against a guy like Quincy Newsome, who's a fantastic worker, great character, can have have his moveset and have his character rub off on Andrew Morris, give Andrew Morris something to learn off of, something to go off of and improve, because he can get familiar with Quincy Newsome's moveset, making it easier for him to have a good match in the second and third go-around, and allow him to evolve and adjust as a singles performer. The fact that he can do that with a win against Quincy Newsome is great, but the fact is, it's like you're rolling the dice. You're taking a chance and hoping that Andrew Morris will take that. I don't know Andrew Morris very well. A lot of us in Metric are really close-knit, but the difference is, like Prophecy, Anarchy, and I, we're all roadies. We all go to these different shows and ride in the same car as each other. Alright, and sometimes we'll bring in Seth or Chain Reaction, and they'll ride with us as well. But usually it's Seth and Chain Reaction riding with each other, and and sometimes Andrew Morris is with them. But at the it's not like everyone's sharing the same locker room and telling the same campfire stories and heading out to vacation at the same time. It's not like we're a fucking family. Right, I don't get to talk to Andrew Morris all too often. I can't really tell whether he can learn quickly, or not. So, it's rolling the dice. Maybe they see something with him that I don't see, but you're taking a chance and hoping that he can learn quickly and at a gradual pace when you have no real proof that he can. So it's just taking a chance and hoping that your swing ends up going from a bunt to a home run. We'll see how it works out. But it was fair for the chance that they had the balls to take the chance. Now the bad, and I'm going to get to it real quick, because I don't like talking about it. It just disappoints me. Indigo Child beat Lucas Bing, and Peyton Hawthorne beat Mia Bing. They just completely buried the Bings, the Lucas Bing and Mia Bing, brother-sister combination. Indigo Child's great, don't get me wrong. I think he's fantastic. He should be facing a guy like Otis Crane next. And Peyton Hawthorne is gradually getting there, back to credibility where she can contend for the for the USW Women's title, which needs to be the case because you need to have someone there to take the reins for Alicia Sinclair and have it just not be just Taylor Hell, Her Equinox, and Haley Osser. You need to have some other names in there. And Peyton Hawthorne is a credible name to put in that hat. But at the fucking sake of Lucas Bing and Mia Bing, I don't like it. It buries the guys outright, and it's just so fucking bad. Either way, that was Capital Carnage. I thought it was a good show. I thought the mid card was bland and it wasn't anything special, but you got that there. So let's get into Intensity. Intensity number 347 on August 14th, 2019. We got 5 weeks to go before Allegiance. The opening segment is Roseline walking out to announce the injury that Alicia Sinclair had. She broke her fibula and tibula, but she also added in that she tore her PCL, which I'm not sure of, but at least it's something in storyline, which would cause her to go into surgery, and she would be out for the next 9 months. I'm not exactly sure how much of that is kayfabe and how much of that is real. I know an ounce of it is kayfabe, but at the end of the day, I don't know exactly if 9 months is going to be the recovery time date. I don't know if she actually did tear her PCL. Maybe she didn't. I didn't know about it, or I didn't read that part. But 9 months seems reasonable. I don't know if she's going to get surgery. Probably will get surgery. Yeah, definitely will get surgery. But I don't know. Oh my god. I don't know if she's going to be out for 9 months. It seems reasonable to believe that 9 months would probably be. Maybe it might be longer. 9 months is a reasonable thing. But either way, Roseline announces that sadly, due to Alicia Sinclair's injury, she's going to be forced to vacate the USW Women's Championship, meaning that there is no longer a USW Women's Champion at the moment. Haley Osser then proceeds to walk out and make the claim to Roseline that she should be given a shot to win the vacant USW Women's Championship, with her Equinox making the claim shortly afterwards after she walks out, causing Roseline to make the announcement that Haley Osser and her Equinox would compete against each other in a best-of-7 series to crown the next USW Women's Champion. The first match of so would start tonight. So, you already know where the future of the women's title is going. The question on everyone's mind is now, who's got the upper hand? Is it going to be her Equinox? Is it going to be Haley Osser? What character development is going to come out of this? It's going to be an intriguing series to watch. First match on the card, Ringmen, Ty Jackson and Thomas Bennett beat the Blue Belt champion Tyree Carver and Logan Clark. So the ending comes with Mr. Anthony rushing in and throwing Tyreek Carver into the ring post behind the referee's back, allowing Thomas Bennett to hit the test of strength and win the match. Afterwards, the ringmen call out Chain Reaction and Prophecy of Metric and challenge them to go face to face with them in the middle of the ring. The ringmen wait. Prophecy and Chain Reaction walk out. I don't know why I wrote Otis Crane. To the top of the ramp before telling the ringmen that they refuse to share the ring with them. The ringmen state that it was nothing persona, strictly professional, but now they want to send a message to everyone in Intensity. The ringmen challenge Prophecy and Chain Reaction to a match next week on Intensity. Prophecy and Chain Reaction accept the match despite stating that they don't want to share the ring with them, and you got the match good for next week. Whatever. That's the overrun. Okay. So, we got the ringmen versus Metric. I don't know why the ringmen are included in this feud, but such is life. Backstage, new Red Belt champion Otis Crane walks around, very injured, before being confronted by Sun Devil Indigo Child, who tells him that whilst he is walking around backstage with a championship he very well may have to vacate soon, he is going about the days waiting until Roseline places him in a position to challenge someone like him for the gold around his shoulder. Otis Crane tells Indigo Child that if he would like to challenge for the Red Belt Championship, all he needs to do is give anyone a reason to believe that he could beat Otis Crane when it matters most. Indigo Child smiles and responds with okay before punching Otis Crane, a very injured Otis Crane, in the face and kicking his crutch from beneath him. Indigo Child then grabs the crutch and gets down to a knee before telling Indigo Child that he could very well get used to this sort of domination over the Red Belt Championship division before dropping the crutch directly onto Otis Crane. So, Sun Devil Indigo Child is now a heel. I mean, unless we've kind of clarified that, he's pretty much a heel now. Obviously, there was the tease for a while, but he's absolutely a heel now. So it's Indigo Child versus Otis Crane next, which is fantastic. That's the way I thought it should be. And I think it should be. First match in the best-of-7 series now. Second match on the card. Her Equinox beats Haley Osser. Her Equinox hits a procession for the clean pinfall victory. That's that. So her Equinox goes up 1-0. Backstage, we get an interview with Nathan Greenway and USW champion Suzuki Hirakashi and tag champions George Martin and Tanner Wallace about the future of their championships. George Martin states that the Stargazers look to have their hands full, but that does not mean they cannot make a challenger of their own. Suzuki Hirakashi then takes the mic, states that whilst Philip Akron seems to have had his hands full, he has his sights fully set back on whomever the next challenger shows himself to be. So, Suzuki Hirakashi is just waiting for the next guy up. I assume it's Mr. Anthony. Third match on the card is the main event of the evening. Peyton Hawthorne beats Dina Lawson. After the match, Taylor Hell attacks Peyton Hawthorne from behind to make her presence known on Intensity, for starters, debuting on Intensity, which is fantastic. Couldn't come at a better time now with the Sinclair injury. Throws Hawthorne into the barricades one time after another, and then hits the Hellraiser on Hawthorne on the outside. Taylor Hell is standing tall and dominant on the Wednesday Night Intensity Women's Division, as she should be, because at the end of the day, her Equinox versus Haley Osser, whoever wins that series should be facing Taylor Hell next. So, the in-ring segment to close the show, Eli Kaner makes a big entrance with new pyro. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment of the night. Let me just make that clear. In-ring segment is the closing segment. Eli Kaner makes his debut on Wednesday Night Intensity. Crowd goes fucking wild because it's great to see Eli Kaner back. Big pyro, new entrance theme. I forgot what the entrance theme is called, but it sounds fucking rad. Cuts a promo on how his shortcomings will eventually lead him to becoming the next big thing on Wednesday Night Intensity, and allow him to challenge for and become the new USW champion. As Eli Kaner says that Intensity is now Kaner's show, he goes to leave before new entrance music plays, so we get either a new performer, or a performer with new entrance theme. Hey guys, let's welcome James back, because the crowd erupts when James returns. Big pop. James goes down to the ring, looks around at the crowd, chanting, James, 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 which is fantastic. That's a great unison chant. The fact that his name is one syllable just works perfectly for any crowd chanting his name. And they should, because James is fucking great. But James smiles, grabs some mic, looks around the crowd, offers his hand to Eli Kaner without saying a word. And then Eli Kaner refuses to shake his hand. It's kind of like Triple H and The Undertaker, and they're like, The Undertaker came back, and then Triple H came back, where it's like, big star comes back, big star comes back. How Eli Kaner managed to become massive, despite not showing up, with the World Heavyweight Championship tournament being underway, how he managed to get off the shelf and then come back as a babyface and just tear the fucking house down, I don't know. But he's great. And everybody else realized at the same time, very quickly. It's not a closing segment, by the way, technically. But Eli Kaner refuses to shake his hand and leaves the ring. James then just tosses the mic back to the what's his name? Timekeeper. James then just smiles, looks around the crowd, and enjoys the moment. Basks in the glory. We had an interview with Nathan Greenway, with Mr. Anthony, about his actions from earlier tonight. And Anthony states that if Clark wants to get involved in his business with Carver, then Clark is going to notice how he needs to take the losses as well. Instead, though, Mr. Anthony challenges Tyreek Carver to put his money and pride where it matters most and defend the Blue Belt Championship against himself at Allegiance 2019 inside of a steel cage. For whatever reason, and I'll tell you this much, I don't believe that's going to happen. I think there's going to be something with the tease of Logan Clark, and the fact that this feud is already, it's not run its course. You can get one more match in, but ending it now would be perfect, because at the end of it all, Anthony versus Carver was fantastic. It was great, and it should be left off where Capital Carnage left off. I think Mr. Anthony is going to end up becoming the next challenger to Suzuki Hirakashi. So, what happens with Carver, I don't know. But they're teasing something now because there's still 5 weeks to go. So you got a number of weeks to get some story done. Obviously, Tyreek Carver doesn't answer. Closing segment is backstage. Wednesday Night Intensity General Manager Rose Line walks around, grabs a contract from Gorilla, and walks out. Martin Reese, Severity General Manager, does the same immediately afterwards. This is the closing segment, but James versus Eli Kana really should have been. That's just my opinion. All right. New character for Zach Hardy. I guess fuck Metric, right? Because Kyle Reese Sr. then. Father. Grandpappy. Not grandpappy. Just the pappy of Kyle Reese Jr., obviously the owner of the company. Walks out, stands in the ring besides in the middle of the two general managers, and then Kyle Reese Jr., his son, and the owner of the company, walks out and does the same. Derek Carter then walks out, cuts a promo on both shows and how their desperation is pitiful, but he understands it based on the fact that their jobs and careers are on the line. Really making Derek Carter look like a goddamn star. The second coming of Christ, the Messiah, Derek Carter proceeds to state that he has made his decision and points to the Motiontron for the show logo of his choice to pop up. But Zach Hardy's Motiontron pops up instead, and Metric walk out to the top of the ramp. But Hardy is in a noticeable suit. I'll tell you this much, it sucked to wear the fucking suit. Don't tell anybody, but I hate the fucking suit, and I hate suits. He grabs a microphone. Well, he has a microphone in hand, says aloud, "You knew it was bound to happen." Hardy then points back to the Motiontron and switches from Hardy's Motiontron to the Arc Wrestling logo, confirming that Derek Carter has signed with Arc Wrestling, the Zach Hardy promotion, not Intensity nor Severity. Now, if you have not remembered, it was Rose Line who, back with the Coalition, Sam Basin and Shane Grayson, wanted the rematch for the USW Tag Team titles that they ended up losing on the Intensity. Alright, so they beat Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin at Blockbuster, the Zach Hardy show from June 2nd in the XL Center. And then, I think the following week, or the week afterwards, on Intensity, Sam Basin and Shane Grayson lost the titles to Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin, and Roseline would not give them a rematch. Hardy said that that Roseline would regret that. That was all the way back in June, so we keep the story alive. The answer was Zach Hardy tells Roseline that not giving the Coalition the USW Championship rematch was the worst mistake of her life, as it cost her Derek Carter, and tells Martin Reese that now, because of Roseline, he is no longer the general manager of Friday Night Severity. Zach Hardy then gets in the ring, shakes Derek Carter's hand, hands him a contract, raises Carter's hand in the middle of the ring, and that's how the show ends. Roseline and Martin Reese both fail to land Derek Carter. Martin Reese is now out of a job, and the fact that Zach Hardy and Derek Carter are standing side by side in unison in the middle of the ring is very anti-prophetic. That's how it ends, which is a fantastic way to end, but damn, Eli Kana versus James got overshadowed like that. How the fuck do you do that? First time we're seeing James, the God, since fucking April. Well, yeah, technically April. No, probably May 1st. I think it was May 1st. That was the follow-up Intensity? Yeah, May. It was May. Alright, my bad. But one way or another, it was May. First time since May 1st, I believe, we've seen James. And Eli Kana making his debut on Intensity. That's fantastic. How you overshadow that? I don't know. Why not save it for... Yeah, why not save Eli Kana versus James for the following week? Come on. Alright. Friday Night Severity. For starters, Wednesday Night Intensity was really good. I really liked the show. Thought it was fantastic from top to bottom. Friday Night Severity number 179, August 16th, 2019, 2 weeks until Ultimate Consequence 2019. For those of you that have not watched the show and do want to watch the show later tonight, these are going to be heavy spoilers. We're running down the card in completion. That's your warning. Opening segment, Kyle Reese Sr. walks out and announces to the crowd that he has been thinking over the outcome of this past Wednesday, and he states that Martin Reese will continue to be in charge of the Friday Night Severity brand in the form of continuing to act as the commissioner, but Kyle Reese Sr. was going to be looking for a new general manager over the next few weeks. Until a new general manager is crowned, Kyle Reese Sr. will serve as the general manager of Severity for the time being, temporarily. Crimson Red walks out, and he asks Kyle Reese Sr. to place him into the Ultimate Consequence 2019 World Heavyweight Championship main event match with Ern Astley and Crosby Thorne. Kyle Reese Sr. states that he will not override Martin Reese's decisions as of this moment, and if Crimson Red wants to have a championship match, he's going to have to find himself. Why one himself? Lone Wolf then proceeds to walk out, tells Crimson Red that if he would like to see championship opportunity at Ultimate Consequence, he can always make a sacrifice and jump his way down from his pedestal to take a shot at Lone Wolf with the Global Championship on the line. Crimson Red then tells Lone Wolf that while he appreciates the opportunity, he refuses to challenge him for the title. Lone Wolf then tells Crimson Red that he knows it is because once Crimson Red loses the loses the Global he goes, okay, Fucking hell. Let me restart. Lone Wolf tells Crimson Red that he knows the reason he declines the Global Championship match is because Crimson Red knows that if he loses the Global Champion, he will never be able to reliably make his way into the World Heavyweight Championship picture again. Crimson Red tells Lone Wolf that once he defeats him, his career trajectory will take a huge downhill slide. Lone Wolf then dares Crimson Red to back up those claims, face him for the global title at Ultimate Consequence 2019, successfully baits him in as Crimson Red accepts and leaves the ring, making the match official for Ultimate Consequence. Match number one, the Wine Cellar, Zach Arden and Xavier King defeat World Tag Team Champions The Golden Manifesto. Alright, ending. After the match, God Complex appear on the Motiontron. Nofian and Artemis send the message to the Golden Manifesto that their World Tag Team Championship reign will be over and done with in 2 weeks' time. Octavian and Aphrodite then warn Golden Manifesto that the God Complex will never stop sending the message. They will never topple the God Complex before pouring black slime over the tops of the Golden Manifesto DX style, officially sending the message that the God Complex are on their way to the World Tag Team titles. Weird segment, but whatever. As the ring is being cleaned, interview with Anna Walczak and Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva about their intentions towards CAJ. Dawson and Silva state that it is to get back on track towards their goal of the World Women's Championship. Cindy Allison Jackson then sneaks up from behind and attacks Dawson and Silva with a steel chair before Dawson and Silva are torn away from CAJ by security, allowing for their escape. Second match on the card, Choi Ji-Yu and Norris Cadabri defeat the Oppositionals with AJ Cornell. Sickle and Ryler collectively throw Norris Cadabri out of the ring, allowing Choi Ji-Yu to kick Ryler in the face and go to hit Sickle with a new lantern before AJ Cornell throws Ji-Yu off the top, causing disqualification. And then Choi Ji-Yu is beaten down by AJ Cornell and the Oppositionals. Majigeta then runs down his way to fend off the Oppositionals and AJ Cornell and help make the save for Choi Ji-Yu, which is a great way to start a pairing. Backstage segment starts up with cameraman run up to the scene of Western Light beating down Norris Cadabri backstage with a lead pipe before medics and security pull him off, and he is confronted by Kyle Reese Sr., who tells Western Light that he will not allow this kind of behavior to take place like it did with CAJ, Dawson, and Silva earlier. He now needs to make the example clear, so Western Light is suspended until Ultimate Consequence 2019. We get an interview after that with Walczak and the International Champion Paul Orlando about his match next week on Severity against World Champion Nasli, and Paul Orlando says that he is happy to get the opportunity to put the World Heavyweight Champion in his place, and hopes that his inevitable victory over the World Heavyweight Champion will put him into the world title picture himself, as he hopes to become the first ever performer to hold the International Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship at the same time. Third match on the card, Jack Ramsey defeats Crosby Thorne. After the match, Crosby Thorne offers his hand to Jack Ramsey, who shakes his hand before Thorne raises Ramsey's hand in the air. Thorne leaves the ring before Sir Violence Washington attacks him from behind, throwing him out of the ring goes to leave the ring. Washington attacks him, throws him out around the ringside. Austin Cole's music hits, and he rushes out with bandages around his shoulder and makes the save, jumping Washington and running him off before helping Jack Ramsey to his feet, and they both point up towards Washington on the steps of the crowd, so Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole versus Washington. Great to see that split didn't do anything. Backstage segment. Kyle Reese Sr. is shown in his office. He's approached by World Champion Nasli, who introduces himself before Kyle Reese Sr. refuses to shake his hand. Reese Sr. states that he remembers when Martin Reese stacked all the odds against Nasli, and he was unable to work well against them. Kyle Reese Sr. then states that it showed him a lot about who Nasli was as a performer, and that showing was an expendability. Kyle Reese Sr. then states that Nasli should appreciate holding the world title while he has it, because Sr. does not like him, and it could be very soon that he loses that hold of the title he held so close to his chest. Reese Sr. then demands Nasli leave his office, and Nasli reluctantly does so there's the storytelling from 3 years ago, rearing its old head again. Match number 4, main event, Olivia Montgomery defeats World's Women's Champion Jade Oliver via countout. After the match, where is it? After the match, Jade Oliver gets to her feet, gets the World's Women's Championship, goes to walk away before the lights go out and return with the World's Women's Championship having been removed from her shoulder and placed on a rug above the ring. The Motiontron then shows a video gif of a ladder spinning around before Aphrodite takes over the Motiontron and tells Jade Oliver that Ultimate Consequence 2019, her championship rematch, will be taking place in a one-on-one ladder match, and Oliver looks on extremely frustrated at the title above the ring to end the show. So, sorry, not a rung. I'm sorry, not a rug. Rung above the ring. That makes no sense. So, fair show. I know we ran by it quick because we have to cut time, and I am not feeling well. But the Friday Night Severity was fun. Both shows were really enjoyable. If I had to pick a winner, I would say the edge goes to Intensity, just for all the shit that happened, as it should be the case, based off of just what was going on. So that is Wednesday Night Intensity and Friday Night Severity for you. That is also Capital Carnage. That is also the Hardy Complex. Thank you for joining us live. I don't know when we're going to be back next week, because that's also up in the air. But for now, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. If you're watching on UZ Media, UZ Direct, I hope you will tune into the previous episodes of the Hardy Complex as you do on YouTube. And I hope you enjoyed this first real gasp at the Hardy Complex Live. I'm Zach Hardy, and I'm signing off.